Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rocket Lasso Live. That means it's a Wednesday, and I'm here to answer your Cinema 4D questions. We've already got a bunch of people in the chat. I can see links already streaming through, so let's get going on this right away. So let's share our screen, and I'm going to go ahead and click on some links. Uh-oh. The Dark Bane is asking, how would you create a rig like this? Rigs are dangerous. Why is it popping up in this window? Um, this might be actually a doable thing. Uh, Look at it blobbing around. Okay, that makes it a little more complicated. Well, first of all, this is made by Reneku or Renekun. I am not sure of the pronunciation, but yeah, look at those different projections that they've got. Um, Let's see. A rig test, end of aloft NURBS on even surface. Yeah, use ray collision, which I'm going to assume means they did some sort of Xpresso, perhaps. You can see that the rigging on the edge is adapting to the surface, and it's casting. Yeah, I don't know. It could be some Xpresso, although I'm not sure about used ray collisions. Having said that, I think I have done things like that. I don't know. We're just going to have to open it up and tinker a little bit because I'd swear I've done certain things along those lines. So we're going to build the. Oh, yeah. And by the way, this is going to be a rapid fire episode. So we're going to have to. I'm going to try and go really quickly through here. And this is definitely not a quicker type question. So I'll try and keep that in mind. So a couple different things. First of all, potentially we could do a very, very simplified version. If we were to make, I'm going to make a landscape object as our object just to be casting down onto, so that we can have quick control over this. And I'm going to go ahead and make a inside 50 radius. Let's lay it flat on the ground, so point it up and down, which means we lay it on X and Z, pull it up, and we want that to be projecting flat on the ground. Now, a quick basic thing we might be able to do is just put on some sort of deformer here, and we might be able to use something like, is it not the collision deformer, maybe the surface deformer? So if we put the surface deformer in here and drop a surface in, and then we set the projection to, I think, just maybe UV mapping, then we should see those individual points snap to our surface pretty well. We've got some different scales that we have to worry about. Scale is 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Yeah, these can get a little bit weird if we set these scales to maybe 0.25, 0.25. Might maintain our scale a little bit better. But if I grab this and I start increasing the number of sides, we're going to have more points, which means we have a better resolution on the surface. Which means if I take this and start moving it around, actually that does not move it around. I'm trying to move it around, but it doesn't. So it seems to have completely taken this surface in this projection type, completely takes over. So we can do things like offset this, but that is not entirely what we want it to do. So that's based on UV mapping, but if we did projection, I'm not sure, like we could initialize, yeah, that's being weird. We might have to make things editable for that. So the surface hits a roadblock pretty quickly there. We also have, there's a different type of, like there's shrink wrap, but I think shrink wrap only works on more of a volume, but let's give it a try. Yeah, along normals, and that is not seeming to do any, it's not capturing it, which is too bad. Let's just make those editable to make sure that that's not the case. Yeah, that unfortunately isn't working. If there's a volume, then maybe it would work. I don't want to make that editable, so I'm going to undo. So having said all of that, it does make me think that we need to go into Xpresso, and those kind of things are doable. Burns is saying that if we throw the inside into an extrude, then it works. But I don't want it to. I don't want to control the geometry that way. I want it to be the spline that's controlled. So I think then we start going too deep into this. I'm going to keep the sides low. I'm going to drop it back down to 6, and then I wonder if we could make that editable and do a little bit of Xpresso. I think it's a little bit away from the rapid fire idea, but if we were to make our landscape, we'll probably have to make it editable. But we'll drag in our landscape. Let's drag in our end side, and then you'd have to pick a particular point, and then it has to get calculated. But then it goes to, I think somewhere there's a ray. Yeah, we have ray collision. And so you have one point and another point, and then the object it's colliding with. So this is as far as I'll go with it, is if we were to make a null, I'm going to actually, let's make this really clear. I'm going to make a cube and a sphere. I can shrink them all. And let's go ahead and make a new material. And just make that stand out a little bit more. Okay, so the basic idea here is if I were to take one cube and move it up into the air, and take the other cube and move it down, and now we have our sphere, and I can move the sphere to some arbitrary place. We'll even scoot it over here. If we feed the landscape object, and then we grab our cube and our cube, and these are ray points. So let's go ahead and say coordinate global position. Global position. The order doesn't matter here because it's just a ray. Then if we feed these both in, it's creating a kind of a mathematical line between these two cubes that's going right through it. And it should be colliding somewhere with the surface. And where that surface is where it's outputting this collision. And we have all sorts of additional information if we wanted to. Right now there's collision, which is just, is it colliding? But we'd say hit position. And now we could take our sphere and put the sphere in, and then output this to the sphere's global position. And boom, we should see the sphere jump to that midpoint. So if I had to grab one of these cubes and move it over, let's see, is it going to refresh? Interesting. It jumped at, it jumped at the 0, 0, 0, but that is not where that is. So that jumped to 0, 0, 0. I thought it was working, but it's actually not working. So what are we missing here? We don't need the end side for right now. Hit position, outputting it here, ray collision here. All that seems correct. Why is it test only, global coordinates? Is it, oh, there we go. I think we had to turn off test only, which is weird. But whatever, I turned that off, and now you can see as I move this cube, our sphere is moving. So as that moves around, we're getting the collision point, and it's traveling along the surface. So the idea of that rig would turn into, and these don't have to be cubes, I just did it to be visual. This could be nulls, let's say. And we could go and copy and paste the entire rig. In fact, you should probably put this Xpresso on the sphere. We don't need the inside right now. And then we could copy and paste that entire rig and make a second one. And then, you know, if you're making a circle, then you make a series of these traveling around, and they would collide with the surface. And then they could, you could link them with a tracer. So just we'll do the simple version here where I'll make 3 of these. So we get a little triangle, and I'll select the sphere and the sphere and the sphere. Let's go to MoGraph, tracer, and the tracer is going to be not tracing the vertices, but is going to connect all objects, and it's going to close the spline. So there we go. Now we get this triangle. And now if we grab these top cubes, let's say, actually we can grab all of the cubes. We can clean this rig up, obviously. But if we grab all these and move it around, you see our triangle, the points of this triangle is going to be traveling along the entire surface. So I think that is the basic idea of the rig, and that didn't take too long. We're not making the advanced version, but you can see how you can make more and more and more of these. You get the spline, and once you get that spline, it'd be, and especially if it's a circular spline, it'd be pretty straightforward to then loft it so that the bottom of your object is constantly connecting with the overall surface, no matter how it's deformed, is the idea. The pretty straightforward ray collision. It's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and give this a quick save, and let's get to the next question. Episode 9, scene files. Number 1A, ray collision. Cool. Okay, back to the chat. Apple, welcome. How's it going? Zach, thanks for coming and hanging out. Monthies, what's happening? Okay, so Paul's got a question. You are, I know what you're linking to because I could see the link. So this was something that some people were talking about in the chat, and I guess I'll click on the link, but it's sending me into Slack, which I don't have directly open. and it's being weird. But I know what you're talking about. Let me see if I can pop it up. Where was that? I think it's share your work. Yeah, Tobias had this. Let's see, can I make it big? Yeah, so I think he's doing some code to put this together. The basic idea is that there's a cool added visual layer of complexity here because it's curved, but the curving part's actually really easy. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to, because this look is starting to get really popular. It's popping around all over the place, and you need. And I know somebody released like a free script or some code that did it. I'm trying to think of a way of doing it without that. I mean, we went and we had made a very complex dynamics-based rig, which is clearly not the way you want to go on this. You could make a really advanced Xpresso version, but that would take a really long time. I mean, like, even if I wasn't on a live stream, I wouldn't want to do it that way because it would take a long time. Once again, like, I'm fine describing the concept of it, but I can't share this file. But let me go ahead and search for our file real quick. Grid. Let's see. Search in Dropbox. Search for the word grid maker. That'll take a second to find, unless it's being dumb. So conceptually, let's see, is that it? Boom. That's not it. We went through this process recently. There we go. So this was all a bunch of code I wrote years ago, and the basic idea is that there is, you take a space and you start dividing it by a lot of settings. So the basic idea here is you have one giant volume here. So you can see I've got a volume. I'm going to say no fillet, and the idea is you make a single cut, and you see there's a cut, but then you cut you've got these two pieces. Now I want to make another cut, and it cuts, and I've got some random settings on here. So it cuts again randomly, and it cuts again randomly. And you keep on taking existing spaces, and you start subdividing them further and further. There's a random seed here, and then I still got a video card issue where things are flashing black sometimes. But you can see I can add on additional elements, and I start getting these really interesting subdivisions. And based on, I've got these random offsets, but I could pull that back and it'll go evenly, or as I control these splines, I'm going to get very different layouts, and we've got some random scale. I mean, just the way I've got these splines is not necessarily doing anything specific. But yeah, see, I'm getting these random subdivisions, and I never set it up with noise, so it'd be getting that cool, like, animation, so it's sliding randomly. But like conceptually, once you kind of take these subdivisions, all I'd have to do is take a bend, put the bend in there, fit it to parent. Actually, we should have rotated that 90 degrees first. And now we fit it to parent. And now if we just spin this around, it's also not subdivided. But yeah, if you were to spin this around 360, and I'm probably going to have to put that into a subdivision. Well, it's looking funky here. But yeah, if you were to subdivide that, then you'd end up with that overall shape. And as you do the random offset, yeah, without the subdivisions, it's not really going to look so good. I guess I could put it into a cloth. Put it into a cloth, and the cloth is going to give us some subdivisions. It's a little funky, but that anyway should be able to handle a bend a little bit better. There we go. So you can see how it's bending. And then the generator, I'm going to give it some more margin. There, get a little space in there. So based on that, if you could see the noise animating, you see you kind of get this really complex looking animation. But the actual bending of it's really straightforward. So the bend takes care of that. I guess to talk about this in a way that's, and once again, I don't know. I just actually had a small idea, actually, of a way we might be able to do this without any kind of code. It wouldn't automatically generate new sections, but let's kind of conceptually, let's look at this from the top, and I'm going to NB so it's solid, and let's make a knife tool. And So I'm going to hit K, K, and actually there's K, and then there's line cut. So it's K, I guess no, KJ is a path. I guess they're all the same. But okay, so no, I'm going to do KK for regular line cut. And I don't know, you're not going to be able to see these lines too well, but the idea is going to be I'm going to click on a line and make a cut. And I'm just going to start making some subdivisions in here and subdividing my space however I want to. So I'll do a cut there, I'll do a cut there, let's do a cut here, let's do a cut there, we'll do one here. And I'm going to take a second and try and do this right. A cut there, that's fine. It's a little pale, even though I'm having trouble seeing exactly where these cuts are going. Cut there. And really, I'm just subdividing this space in some interesting ways. That's what I'm trying to do anyway. Luckily, it automatically snaps to these points, so it's pretty straightforward. Oop, that was a weird one. Yes, do that. Cut. 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 Just a few more. One there, one there, one there, one there. Why not? Let's get a couple of small ones in here. Okay, that is good enough. So if we go back here and deselect it, you should see the lines better. There we go. So those are all the cuts we made. So we just kind of manually subdivided the entire space. So my thought is what if we make a displacer and I tell it to displace on Z. So let's go ahead and drop that as a child, and I'm going to say I want you to displace on a plane, and that plane is going to be Z+. So that's going to randomly move points up and down. So my thought is, what if we put in a noise, and I can see, well, let's do a couple things here. Yeah, there's going to be limitations here for sure. But I'm going to do something like that, and let's go ahead and say, yes, that's displacing. But if we take our noise and we stretch it out to infinity on X, we get X, Y, Z. If I put X on 0, it's going to stretch it infinitely. Now let's go ahead and give that some animation speed and hit play. And now we're going to see our individual little elements moving up and down. Now it did seem like we're getting a little flash there, and that flash is when one of these lines passed another. So unfortunately, this technique is going to stop you from being able to push things too far because it will break. I'm trying to think of any way of getting around that. There's no way we can clamp it. So I think that's just going to be a limitation of it. So we have to just be careful that we don't displace beyond that point. And then if we do that displacer, we can make a second one. And this one, I'm going to say that it should be on X plus. And the noise for this one should be infinite on Z. So now we've got those lines traveling left and right. And let's give it a different random seed. And now we actually do have, it's a very small minor version of it, but now we do have these randomly kind of wobbling around. It's not bad. It's further than I thought we would get. And then we can do a couple parametric things here if we want to do inner offsets or extrude them. We could, let's see, what's a way of keeping this a little, I mean, we had to do those initial cuts, but now that we've done that, could we make it a little bit parametric? We could do a bevel to get an inner extrude. We can grab a polyFX and drop that in as the third deformer. And that's going to explode out our segments if we tell it to. So we can say like 0.9, 0.9, 0.9. Oh, that's weird. We've got some we've got n-gons, and that breaks the n-gons. Interesting. I guess that makes sense. I can't think of any way around that because, yeah, these are a bunch of n-gons, and that object does not like n-gons. I wonder if other shapes would. As out of curiosity, I'm going to put an explosion deformer in there, and let's give it a little bit of strength. And actually, that is maintaining it. So if we put an explosion in there, we get a speed of 0 and an angle speed of 0 and a randomness of 0, then this just becomes a scaling tool as the individual polygons scale down. Now, unfortunately, it's like a percentage of the size. So if it's really big, it scales down more than a small one. But even if we put this at, I don't know if it's 0 actually counts, but if we were to put this in subdivision surface, we should be able to see. Okay, 0 doesn't count, but if we put this really tiny, like 0.001, then it should still separate all these segments out without us actually seeing them. And now we start getting options for things we can do where these are all now separated out. So that's a subdivision, but that doesn't have to be subdivided. But yeah, we can turn that off, and these could become different extrusions. We could put this into... what's a good thing we could do? We could put this into a bevel to get parametric extrude. We could also put it into, actually we probably put into the poly effects now, because now those are already exploded. Does that work? Nope, it instantly triangulates. That's unfortunate. All right, that's okay, because we could use something like a bevel. A bevel can kind of give us a parametric extrude in Vanilla Cinema. If we change this to be polygon mode, then you can see we start getting these extrusions. So now we can extrude and do offset, so you can get these cool shapes like that. And now those are all extruded out. That's pretty cool. I like it. And yeah, it's keeping all the different shapes moving around. And like I said, unfortunately, I can't think of any way of stopping it from overlapping. If we, you know, I really would love to make these like go push further, but they will. Actually, I'm surprised it's not exploding more. It's doing an okay job. At a certain point, they will pass through each other and flip out. Having said that, it's doing a surprisingly good job of pushing that further. And then, yeah, I'm going to undo that. But yeah, that gets your overall shape. And now if we were to take our bend, we can go and put that in as a last step. We take that, spin it to the side. We can say fit to parent, keep Y length, I think, and spin it around. Oops, I guess I should have, there we go, fit to that parent. Yeah, there you go. And now we can do a 360 spin on it. That's going to look a little funky, I think. Good, because we don't have subdivisions. But even in our hierarchy, if the bend came later, we could take this and then put that into a subdivision surface. Or in a cloth surface, rather. And now we're going to get those subdivisions. Unfortunately, it starts round. Okay, you pull that down. It's not rounding it anymore. And now we get the subdivisions. We subdivide it like 2 times. And then we bend not the cloth surface, but the cloth surface, not the child inside of it. But now that can bend, and now we can have some of those details. And now we get this nice little bend going around here. And it's all subdivided, and we get that shape. And it's pretty much, it's not quite parametric because we had to do all those subdivisions initially, but yeah, there we go. We've got the effect working to some degree in Vanilla Cinema, further than I thought we'd go. I'll go ahead and yeah, I'm just curious how far we can push these until it like really breaks. Yeah, I'm surprised at how stable this is being. I wouldn't think it would be this stable. But yeah, I'm kind of impressed. That's cool. Yeah, increase that subdivision. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. So I'll go ahead and give that a save as number 2. Offset random grid. Yeah. Okay, thanks for the question. It did make me think about it in a way I had not been, so it's kind of cool. So let's see, do we got some more questions? Let's see. I'm gonna wait for some new questions to jump in here. How to, well, be Havana. It looks like you tried to link to something, but the link didn't quite work. MDev, how to rig a camera like this? Brink. Let's see what we got. I don't understand the question. Camera shake, camera look at, camera. Car cam. Yeah, I'm not understanding the question because it's just a single picture. Having said that, it does make me think of something cool that I wouldn't mind talking about. I've never really been known where to put this. I might even put this in my dynamics series. Um, but something that might be cool, that might be interesting to everyone. Let's see, what's a good basic rig? This is usually like a car rig that I build, or a camera to automatically chase dynamic objects, and I want to show you it. I'm trying to think of a good way of doing this. I think what I might do is make a cube. So we're going to be a cube, and we'll make a field of spheres, and everything's going to be dynamic, including the floor. Right click, I'm going to add a simulation or rigid body. So now everything's dynamic. Let's go ahead and make a honeycomb array. Let's go ahead and lay that flat on the ground. Let's go ahead and shrink it up a bunch. There we go. And we'll move those up into the air. Let's move our cube up into the air. That's fine. And it's probably a good idea to put everything into a box. So I'm going to make a big box. We've done this recently where I'm going to make it a collider body, but I'm going to make sure that its shape is a static mesh. And then we're going to right click and we're going to say don't render, but I do want to see it. So I'm going to tell it to have a display tag, and the display tag is going to tell it to be lines. So we got this box on the outside. Cool. And now let's go ahead and make our cube. That's a little intense. That's better. Okay, so we've got a cube here, and we want to chase that cube around. Kind of be like imagine if you had a camera that's following, like you're kind of like a drone that's flying behind this. The basic idea is I want to make some random motion in here, so that's going to fall to the ground. But I'm going to go and make everything have really low friction. And let's go ahead and rename that cage, because I'm going to mess it up, I'm sure. Let's go ahead and grab all of these. I'm going to give it all pretty high bounce, 90%, and pretty low friction, let's say 5%. So yeah, the cube's bouncing around a lot now, which I'm fine with. And let's go ahead and make some turbulence. So I'm going to go and make a particle turbulence. We'll give the turbulence a decent amount of strength, and we'll give it some scale. So these things should start moving around quite a bit. We'll give ourselves a bunch of frames, and there we go. We've kind of got a random thing moving around, and we don't know where it's going to end up. And I kind of like how it's getting super crazy and bouncy, and it's getting knocked around by the spheres. So that's almost exactly what I want it to be. So why don't we go ahead and give this a quick save and start building a nice automatic dynamic camera rig. Dynamic camera rig. Alrighty. So I think I'm going to start out with a null, and I'm going to tell this null to automatically chase after the camera. So it's going to actually just snap to the camera. I want this rig to be completely separate from the dynamic object, so we could potentially change objects as well. And, okay, we start with a Cinema 4D character tag, constraint tag, and that constraint tag is going to just go wherever the heck our cube goes. So here's our goal, or I guess we'll just call this our target. So this null is going to go wherever the target goes. I'm not even sure that's entirely true. I don't think I want a PSR. I still want this character constraint tag, but what I want it to do is be a spring. So what this is going to do is travel behind it, okay? So all I care about is the position. So I want this to follow wherever our target is based on the position. So let's go ahead and take a look at this null. I want to be able to see it really clearly, so I'm going to actually make a copy of our target so it's the same size. Make it a child, make it not dynamic, and let's make another material, make it orange so that we can see it chasing around. And let's make sure this is zeroed out on the null. So let's see what our target tag is currently doing. If I hit play, we're going to see this is falling down. But you see, it is moving around trying to chase it. It's not dynamic itself. It's moving around chasing it. The reason it's moving the way it is that there is an inherent length. It automatically sets the length at the beginning. So if I set that down to 0, you can see it's actually now moving positionally pretty similar to where that object's going. But right away, you can see we're using a spring, which means it's calming it down quite a bit. Like it's not moving around as quickly and as crazy as our main object is. So if I go and I start adding in a bunch of drag, then it's going to start making it smoother and smoother and smoother. The two main parameters here are our drag and our stiffness. So if I grab our stiffness and I start making it lower and lower, and I want to go quite low. So now you can see I'm down to 2%. So you see our object is moving around quite a bit, but our little camera cube is staying within a certain distance of it, but it's calm as compared to it. So right there, that is a fun start. Like, that's working well. And you see it's constantly kind of trailing behind it a little bit. We could also indeed give it some length. So it never does quite catch up to it. It'll try and catch up to it a degree, but it's not going to snap on it. Actually, now I think about it, I think I would want this to be a length of 0. And then we would make the next level here. So this is going to be level 1, and we should name these because it'll get complicated soon. So I'm going to call this like soft follow. Let's go ahead and copy and paste that, and that's going to calculate first. So now we've got our second one, and then let's call this one follow jiggle. What this one is going to do, let's get rid of that original target, and now we've got this new one, and this one is going to also target an object, but it's going to actually target the soft follow. So it is not it's not worried about this cube at all. It's worried about what this other null is doing. Now, based on this one, I'm going to go and get rid of all this drag, and I'm going to add on, let's give it a length of 0, and let's start giving it some a little bit of stiffness here. Now, the basic idea would be that if we, especially if we get rid of the drag, if we make that other one a little bit stiff, this one can get some overshoot and some wiggle. So you see that one like overshot, and there's a little bit of a wiggle to it. So now we've got a separate control for how it's going to catch up and then possibly overshoot and wiggle. So that does mean that this first one, now that I think about it, can get a little bit of length to it, so it doesn't have to catch all the way up to it. But our second object is going to be kind of jiggling and slowing down afterward. So cool, that is working fine. I like that little kind of horizontal jiggle on it. Now, what is next? What is next is going to be giving us some height. So I'm going to make another copy of this overall null, and then this one is going to be, let's just call it y+. It's going to be our y+ null. And actually, now I think about it, this one is just going to be a child of the jiggle. What this one is doing is it's just moving us up into the air a little bit. This one is going to be zeroed out positionally, and let's go and move up into the air. So now we're always going to be above our object. So it's always looking down. So now we've got that. Let's go ahead and build some sort of target. So I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of that y null, and let's just call this one target. And this one, we can say that it should be aiming directly at the object. And we will start with this because we'll add on one more layer of complexity on top of it. So what should this target do? Well, I mean, we can just make this directly a camera. In fact, why don't we go ahead and make it directly a camera? I'm going to make a camera. I'm going to make it a child of Y, and let's hit Shift-C, PSR, reset the position exactly. So it's just hanging out on that null that used to be the cube. So now if we right-click and we add another character tag, I can say that I want you to be aiming your Z+ at our target. Now we could use a camera target tag, but we're using everything with these constraint tags, so I'm fine with this. Now you'll see here, we had a problem almost right away. The camera started tilting off to the side. It's rotating around all over the place. We definitely don't want that. So something that we could do is make a copy of this Y null, and then I'm just going to call this up vector. And I'm going to take that, and it's already zeroed out inside of the Y, but I'm just going to move it up another, whatever, a random amount, 100 units up into the air. So now in our camera tag, we can go ahead and also, instead of just being an aim, we can also add on an up. And the up is going to be, the axis is going to be Z+, because that's what's aiming. And then we want the up vector to be Y+. So because it's a camera, the defaults look good. I'm just going to go ahead and drag in the up vector, and now it's going to force the camera to always be pointing upward as its secondary angle. But its primary concern is looking at our object here. So that's all well and good. But while we're getting this really nice smooth motion, like the position of the camera, the actual rotation of the camera is actually quite stiff still. So what I would do here would be add another soft follow. And then this one is going to be our soft target. So our soft target is going to be constantly trying to follow the position of the cube. And in fact, why don't we go ahead and do a very similar setup? I'm going to go ahead and make a copy there. I don't need to be dynamic. Shift-C PSR. There we go. So now we can actually see it. This is what it's trying to do. It's catching up slowly to it. Now, this is the target. It's where it's looking. So this one can be a lot snappier. So all I'm going to do is we're going to put the length down to 0. We're going to chill out that drag quite a bit, and we're going to increase our stiffness. So it's going to be trying to stick to this cube quite a bit, but not perfectly. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and yeah, okay, now we're getting some like overlapping wiggle. So you can see wiggle, 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 wiggle. So that's pretty good. But if we put a lot less stiffness on it too, it's going to like fall behind. So that adds more lag. So we kind of got this like on one level, it's kind of like our stiffness and overshoot is also simultaneously, the lag behind, like our follow through, is the same as the jiggle. So those two just kind of are inextricably linked. We see how we've got this a lot calmer of a version traveling around. So instead of targeting our actual final cube, why don't we go ahead and target this new soft target? So we just grab our camera and we set our aim at our new soft target. And now let's turn off the target temporarily. And now keep in mind that our actual target has always been just this, this dynamic object. So let's go ahead and actually go to that camera. We're pretty zoomed in, so I'm going to zoom out a bit. And okay, and now we need to start making our judgments here. But you can see how we're actually kind of chasing this around, and we don't have all the craziness that it is introducing. So kind of like we've got this dynamic soft camera. See how we're falling behind? And it's constantly kind of chasing and wiggling, trying to catch up to it. It can get bumped around, but that's all working pretty well. So now we can just make changes to our rig. We've actually got a really nice, powerful rig that we have control over. So on our soft follow, we could give it a bigger length that it's supposed to be following. Now this is our, I want to make sure that our soft follow is always on the same height. So I'm going to go ahead and also on the same tag, I'm going to say, let's add a PSR, and the PSR is going to also follow our target. And you see that should be, it's going to confuse it right now. But if we turn off rotation and we go to constraint, and I'm going to say, I only want to be linked to the Y position, then now it should hopefully, well, let's see, calm it down. No, it's losing its mind. Okay, these two in this case then seem to be fighting each other a little bit. Yeah, this is added in this layer confusion, so maybe it's not a good idea to add a PSR to the same tag that's got the spring. So, but having said that, I mean, and I'm not even worried. It's a small detail, so maybe we'll just ignore that. But we could add another null underneath the soft follow that is locking the soft follow, but going to the exact height of this cube. But now you can see that we're further behind where it is, and it's constantly trying to turn and look at it. And now we've got this automatic dynamic cube that's kind of like a cameraman that's trying to stick on our target. And we've got all of our controls, which are pretty fun. We've got our soft. The two main ones are going to be this. The jiggle and the soft target. The soft target is going to be how much the camera is directly looking at it. So as we add stiffness, the more it's going to be looking directly at this cube. It's going to be like, no, look at the cube, look at the cube, look at the cube. And as we go really low on it, the cube can escape a little bit. You see it got away over here and out. Oh, no, there, it's down here. Nope, it's over here. And then countering that drag will also slow us down. So it's like, oh, catch up. Oh, it's over here. Okay, cool. Whoop. We haven't gotten it to bounce too hard. Boom, gets knocked over. And so, yeah, the camera's constantly trying to catch up to it without too much jiggle. So, yeah, that's kind of building an automatic dynamic rig that will chase an object around. And this is in this case, this cube, but it doesn't have to be a dynamic cube. I originally came up with this concept years ago when we had those car races over at Grayscale Gorilla, where we had the cars that would fall apart. And I had cameras that would automatically be able to follow behind dynamically. And you can take this even further. Like somewhere in this rig could be a dynamic object that itself is dynamic and is trying to bounce and not hit these objects. But it's almost like your camera becomes a character in the scene, if that makes sense. It's pretty cool. Fun little thing to add into the entire thing. And even on top of that, it's like, okay, this is all working well. It's chasing the cube, trying to catch up to it. But on top of that, you could go and start adding on layers of randomness. I mean, obviously, Gorilla Cam from Grayscale Gorilla has some of this functionality, but then you can go and add in all the noises. But even now we've got this camera. If we want to, we could just make a duplicate of this camera. I'm going to delete the dynamics tag off of it, or the constraint tag. So now we've kind of got this child camera. But now on this new one, we can go and add a Cinema 4D vibrate tag, and we could add on some random rotation, and it's going to be really chaotic here. But let's see, what's a good way of showing? In fact, I want to see it very chaotic, so I'm going to link to the camera, and I can see we get this crazy wiggle. So we could go ahead and add on whatever rotations we wanted to. So then you see we've got this chaos happening. But now, obviously, if we grab our frequency and we lower it, then now we've just got this extra wiggling layer of rotation on top of it. That's got nothing to do with the way it's moving. It's just this extra motion. You'll see if I zoom out that we get, oop, it looks like positionally it did move 0, 0, 0. Okay, so now it's the same position, but now you can see it's got a crazy overshoot and randomness moving around. And if you wanted to, I mean, those are obviously too much. Drop that down to maybe 10. And we wouldn't want all 3 axis, but I'll just leave all 3 on right now. So you see we get this random rotation where it's based on the original. We could turn on some random position, and let's add that onto all 3. And now you can see that there's also this random wiggling around as well. And what's great, I love building this kind of rig where this one is going to be like the camera jiggle, and then this one is just the base one. So if I wanted to be doing a quick test and checking my animation, I can go to this calmer camera. And then because the next camera is a child of it, I can click on that one and go to the crazy motion one where it's like, okay, now there's all this action layered on top of it. And this one, you know, it's going crazy trying to keep up and look at where this is not doing quite as good of a job, but you get that extra layer of motion on top of it. But yeah, I think this is working pretty well. Looking around, kind of trying to chase our cube. We do seem a little sideways right now. I'm not sure why that happened. Maybe I think our camera position got moved at some point. There we go. Yeah, that got unzeroed out. But yeah, there we go. I want to move on to another question, but yeah, there we go. An automatic dynamic camera rig that can even chase around dynamic objects. Zoom. And actually, I mean, I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but even this is like, okay, now we've got this final camera. But another idea could be, what if we just made I'm going to make a copy of the jiggle camera, but this jiggle camera, I'm just going to say, what if this camera then had a constraint tag on it? What if we go and add a Cinema 4D constraint tag, and then this has got a spring, and the spring is controlling the position and rotation. So now this new, completely unrelated camera is trying to reference all the other camera stuff that we did, and it's constantly trying to catch up. So as we add on, let's give it no length, and let's give it decent amount of stiffness. But now we've got another camera that's running after all of those other rigs that's trying to keep up, and now this can give us another layer of drag and jiggle. So if we go to a third person point of view, actually, I cranked the stiffness up so much where it's practically identical. If we start lowering the stiffness, you see that we can have the second camera, and it has these little offshoots and wiggles. And if I add more drag, it's going to take longer for it to rotate and catch up. And if we add less stiffness, that will also have bigger overshoots and wiggles. So look how we got this extra big wiggle after the fact. Oh no, this is with a lot of drag, so it's actually really slow. Do you see how it's like really slow to respond? So these things can layer and layer and layer and layer on all these different aspects. By going to this camera, you can now see that we'll see the object in general, but we're going to be like way behind. It's going to take a long time before we get it calmed down. So I'm not sure what kind of cameraman this would be, but it's like really slow to go and respond to what this camera is doing. So yeah, really fun way of kind of building up whatever kind of rig that you want to have for your setup. Whoa, I'm not sure all this twisting we're getting, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap that one up, give it a quick save, and we'll jump back into the chat and see what the next questions are. Mosh Pit Simulator, yeah, exactly. See you, Leo. Paul's saying copy the rig, and then and we could even build a couple Xpresso controls on that would go a really long way. And Paul's saying if we had like one jiggling camera, one not jiggling camera, or just different things we could Oh yeah, make two of those and randomly switch between them. I thought you were saying, and I've done this before. Imagine if we had, like, here now we've got this really smooth camera, and now we got this jiggling cam. But then you go and you make a third camera, and you call this like the morph cam. And then, I mean, there's actually is a morph camera in cinema, but we could manually do it where we have this morph camera, and this one would have two different targets, and we could transition between the super shaky and our final one. So the ways of combining those get insane. You go and you make a PSR. Inside the PSR, we give it the target of our, let's just say our little base camera here, and then we can add a second PSR, and this one can be our jiggling camera. And now, let's delink. We should probably have colorized all of these to get this a little bit calmer. But, yeah, there's not too much separation there. But as we drag, yeah, it's going to keep on repeating here. So we're not going to be able to see it in real time because it's calculating every single refresh with these springs. So it's a little trickier. But, yeah, we could transition between 2 points by animating the weight here. And we could transition between two cameras that have completely unrelated rigs. So you have like the crazy one and the calm one, and a couple Xpresso sliders. Go a really long way. Pretty cool. Okay, so let's go back to questions. Thanos, how would you approach something like this? Let's see what we got. Ooh, cute. They look like bendy straws. Are they bendy straws? Vincent Schwink. I think we've done one of his before. Ooh, a bunch of noodle. Whee! Whee! That's cool. So yeah, a bunch of little celebrating straws here. I can think of exactly how I want to do this. I'm trying to think of how to make it not overly derivative. Or make it structurally decently different. Do we have any kind of... I did install the model, so if we go to presets, we should have things like sculpting, studio, 3D objects. What kind of stuff do we have? It would be kind of fun to just find an object in here. We've got humans. That's going to be too complicated. I forget what, we got sculpting, we have visualize. Yeah, those look very similar. One of these I thought had a whole series of models, but these all seem to be the same. Broadcasts. Yeah, these are all the same. That's not what I want. And sculpting, I don't think we're going to get anything super interesting in there. Or not, they are super interesting. Problem is they're not a very vertical thing. I kind of want like a piece of bamboo or something. I just don't have that handy. Yeah, we'll just make a very, very quick generic model. Nothing fancy. So what I want to do is probably just make a cloner, and I just want to make a stack of these boxes. And then I'm gonna add a random. Random, not position, yes, scale. And we're just gonna have those be randomly like that. Cool, that's gonna be one pillar, and yeah, that's fine, because we'll even get scale from hair. We're gonna be using hair. Yeah, we'll just do it like this, because it's kind of weird and interesting. We'll make a couple variants, why not? We'll make one with a one level fillet, like that, no Fong tag. And then, heck, we'll make a third one, and the third one will have a full fillet. Like so. Except they need to be bigger. T for scale. Cool. So those are going to be our three hairs. So let's go ahead and I'm going to put, I'm going to zero them out, Shift-C, PSR, and we're going to make three connect objects. Make one, copy, paste, paste. Connect, 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 and then we can go ahead and make editable, 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 no Fong tags, and now we've got our three models, 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. So Now we got to make our hair. Let's go ahead and make something maybe a little bit visually interesting. I'm going to, what's maybe a unique-ish shape? I'm going to make a torus, and we're going to make the torus be a slice of 90 degrees. And let's check out our subdivisions. Let's go ahead and we're going to make it way bigger, but let's go and get the subdivisions correct first. So we'll do something like that. And that's actually pretty good. I'm going to make this editable. And let's go ahead and do a loop, 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 loop. D for extrude. So I'm going to extrude that out. And I'm going to go UL. And I'm going to go D for extrude. UL. D for extrude. Actually, I'll do that later. We'll do UL, shrink that again. D for extrude. And UL. One last D. Letter D for big extrude. And then this one, just for fun, extrude inward. Cool. So that's going to be our weird, interesting shape. And we want hair to grow on some of this. I'm going to remove, I'm going to untriangulate, which should clean up this edge. Actually, if I say untriangulate U, Shift U, then it'll pop this open. I can say create n-gons, and that should flatten that out entirely. Cool. And now I want to go and select just the ones on top. Like so. We'll spend a second to try and make something look interesting here. We'll grab these, and we'll grab those. Good enough for me. We're going to make that a selection, set selection, and I think those are probably going to end up being really big, but I think this thing could be bigger. So we'll make that bigger. Oops. And then let's turn on SSAO. And let's go ahead and make a material and drop it on those three objects. And now let's go and make hair. So we've got our base mesh. Let's go ahead and add a, let's make sure we're on polygon mode with those selected, because I think it'll automatically apply to the hair to them. Simulation, add hair. Cool. Hair has been added to those. It's currently set to root on the polygon vertex, but I'm going to say on the polygon area. And I'm going to give it a count of, I don't know, 500. I guess those were very gridded. Polygon center. Maybe. These are going to be random. The other ones were very uniform, but I'm a little concerned with the model we made that uniform is not available. Right now the growth is based on the normals, but I'm going to give it a direction, and the direction is going to be Y, so they're going to grow straight up. Yeah, I'm fine with the randomness, so we're going to go ahead and let these be random. And now that we've got those going, why don't we go ahead and increase the length to 200, and I'm going to scale these connect objects down. Grab model mode, scale, uniform, scale them down to their visually approximately the height of each of these hairs. And now we're going to go ahead and go dynamics. No, actually, let's go to generate hair renderer. It's no longer a hair renderer. It won't render hairs, but it's going to be based off of instancing. And the instance is going to be what? And then the instance in this case is going to be that object. And now, boom, we're going to get a whole bunch of little clones of that. Now, the thickness, as we've talked about in other episodes, the thickness is entirely based on the hair material. And I don't know what it's specifically supposed to be, so let's just go ahead and try 11, 11. Not bad. Let's try 22, 22. Yep, there we go. Now they're approximately correct. They're a little big, so why don't we go ahead and... No, they're not big, it's just that there's too many. So let's go to our hairs, and we're going to cut back on the number of hairs significantly. And in fact, we're going to cut way back, because I want to put a couple different types here. I wonder if there's is there a setting? These are the hairs, and we have growth. Minimum spacing. Yeah, minimum spacing. That's what I want. I want a minimum spacing of 22. And that should stop these from bumping into each other. So there we go. That is now making individual copies. And now, I guess the basic idea is I would just copy and paste this entire bit of hair. And then this new one, I would give a different random seed, if there is such a thing. regrow. Nope. Is there, it's based on polygon area. There's got to be a setting somewhere under like advanced. Yeah, we have a random seed here. There we go, random seed. So yeah, we can go ahead and randomize those. And now this one can be generating the second connect, and then we can copy and paste again. Give another random seed. One of the problems here though is that they're going to be intersecting because every copy of the hair is going to have its own unique seed and thus be intersecting. It's just they're going to overlap. So that might be a slight hiccup on the current setup we're doing. But now we've got all those being fed in as references. I'm going to put all three of those models into this null, hide those. So we get our final object. We can go ahead and apply materials directly onto here. Make 3 different colors, brighten that up a little. That one's a little intense, I think. So we'll apply that, and we'll apply that. There we go. We got 3 different types. So now we've got these nice little pillars all stacked up. Different thicknesses seem to be appropriate for different ones, perhaps. Right now it's just kind of this uniform hair material. So let's go ahead and drop that back down like 16, 16. Should make them a little thinner. I mean, we just got to find the right amount. We also have the ability to make it skinnier as it gets near the tip, depending on what you're making. So those could get nice and skinny. Now it's even looking like maybe like a piece of wheat or something. I kind of like that. Yeah, so we get all these nice little spikes going. They're all growing vertically off the surface. We have all the options we want under the hair to do things like click on scale. And that should dramatically add some variation in here. If we do like 99%, we're going to get some really short ones and some really long ones. In fact, we could say the overall scale should be significantly smaller. Now the random ones can just be sticking out more on the top. Something like that. I like that quite a bit. Now, when it comes to the actual question for the, well, I'm assuming one of the main parts of the question was the motion that we're getting. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at that? Right now, we've got forces, and the forces we have gravity. That's the main one. If we were to keyframe that, I think we're going to see something pretty significant. Let's go ahead and give this a quick save. Air for models. Okay, I want to hit 1 frame forward and just see how quickly we're calculating. Seems safe, so I'm going to hit play. Not really seeing much in the way of motion, which is interesting. I mean, they're still dynamic, right? Yeah, they're dynamic. And there are subdivisions. Let's go ahead and I'm going to add a turbulence just so we can see what's happening. Particle turbulence. And I just saved, so it's safe, I think, to hit play. Okay, now we're getting some motion. Yeah, you can see that there's a little bit of motion. It's not the quickest thing, but now you can see we're getting these nice little wiggles. The turbulence is introducing a little bit of imperfection. They start wiggling over. I already like the way this looks. It's already really weird. I would probably want to get rid of these. Oh, there's no Fong tag. These look like they have Fong tags, don't they? Oh, it's because maybe the hair has Fong tags. Yeah. Oh, interesting. When the hair takes over the model, the Fong tag is now based off the hair. So yeah, we turn those off, and now we get these nice little spiky things. They're actually kind of cool and a little bit crystalline in the example we're doing here. So that's pretty neat. But yeah, this is gravity taking over, so they're all going to flop over eventually because they have gravity pulling down. So if we let this play through, we're going to actually see them flop over more. And we don't. Well, I mean, potentially we want that. But I think in the case of what we've got here, we would just want to animate our gravity, or we could, right now all the gravity is being controlled via the forces in here. So if we go to forces, we have a gravity. Instead of using that gravity, we could put the 0. Instead of controlling 3 of them at a time, we could just go and make a particle force. So let's make a particle gravity. And yeah, I think that works. Let's see. I'm gonna hit play. I don't know how strong it is, and it should automatically apply. I would think. Gravity. Okay, I cranked it up. to be 10 times as strong, and now it seems to sort of be doing something. I mean, all the hairs are perfectly straight there, so they don't know where to go exactly. But yeah, that's that gravity being there. I'm going to go ahead and make it significantly stronger. Let's make it 10,000. And it still probably will take that second in the beginning to offset, but once it does, it should go down pretty quick. So there we go. Now it's going to collapse down. So the idea here would be letting those slump over, and we could go and grab our original base mesh and make it a hair collider. So now these hairs should not want to pass through the ground. There's always a chance that it adds a significant amount of render time, but this one, it's very low poly, so I think this is okay. So these shouldn't, I don't think they're going to be able to pass through the object now, although they do seem to be very easily passing through the object. Is that a setting we have to turn on? Yeah, we say collisions. Interesting. I'm not going to worry about that specific detail. Forces, collisions. I'm not sure exactly what detail we're missing. I mean, maybe it only sees the guides, but I would think it's on individual hairs. Properties, surface animation, relax, maps, modifiers. Dynamics are applied to guides. That would be the problem. If we say hairs, it's going to be a lot slower, but let's see what happens. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn off 2 of the sets of hair just to be safe. Oh, wow, that actually is still running really quick. I'm impressed. But is it working? Yeah, I think it is. I'm not... are they passing through the surface? It's really hard to tell. That one seemed to. And those seem to be as well. I don't know. I'm not sure about the dynamics here. I mean, we have steps and iterations. We've got an object that should be colliding. I'm just not 100% on it. And also there's a number of subdivisions and whatnot. This is not a detail I'm terribly worried for, especially for this question, because it just goes to us keyframing this the accelerator. First of all, we'd probably want it to, if it's supposed to be initially here, we'd have these all flop down to this position. And on hair, pretty sure we can go to, I don't know where. Is it forces? Somewhere we have a set initial state. I think we do. Roots, auto, guides, no, reroute, regrow, store, update guides. I thought there was an initial state. I'm just not thinking of it right now. Not the most important detail. But anyway, I think you see where I'm going already. If we let those flop down and we keyframe this, and then suddenly on the next frame, gravity is inverted, then right at that moment, these should be like, okay, flop down. And then right at that moment, they're going to be like, oh, wait, go up. And then they'll all go upward. And then if there's a keyframes back the opposite way, obviously, it'll drop back down again. So yeah, we could jump here. And here, gravity will be what it is. And 1 frame later, letter G will jump you 1 frame. And it'll be keyframe to go down again. And now all I want to do is go into hair. I'll grab all 3 just in case. We'll go to forces. We've got gravity. We've got all these different settings, but there's no friction. So, and there's no, actually, yeah, maybe it's under dynamics. Properties, animation, rest, logic. I mean, we do have a drag, which is pretty much what I want. So if I put a pretty high drag on here, is that going to calm them down? I don't want them too wiggly. Yeah, and then they're going to go up. And then gravity will take over, and then they go down again. So yeah, pretty much that is the extent of the entire idea here. We just let hair do the work. Now right now I have turbulence on, so they're falling. The way they fall down is determined by the turbulence. But if we had like the tiniest amount of wind blowing in one particular direction, I think they'd all fall that way. Just for an example, as the very last thing we do, why don't we go ahead and add a particle wind, and the wind will have blow kind of forward on the overall scene. I don't even think it needs much strength. It's like wind 5. But now I think we'll see that all of them break forward. So instead of them randomly falling over, we should see them having, well, now you see there's a lot of uniformity in the way that they're falling, but they've still chosen to interestingly fall backward. I think like the tip tips forward, which counterweights the midpoint to fall backward, and then the entire thing feels like it's falling back. But of course, that was with wind being relatively weak. If we make it a little stronger, maybe we'll see more of a result. Yeah, now the middle point is being pushed forward. I don't know. It's going to be a little different. The hairs are obviously collapsing differently than they did with turbulence. It's just not as direct as I thought that would be. Yeah, if we crank the wind up, let's see what direction we're blowing. Yeah, that seems correct. Yeah, okay, well, if you crank it up high enough, obviously now it's like, okay, now I'm blowing that direction. So if we just did that for the first couple frames, that would cause it to fall forward. But I do like the turbulence and giving it those couple frames to all of them kind of collapse and do this wiggle. Like even that, like if I was doing a render, like this is the cool looking frame where it's kind of like this coral and they're all growing upward. I love, you know, we told them to grow only on Y vertical, like straight Y, not based on the normal. So it gives it more of a plant organic vibe where it's like, no, I want to point upward. So it's pretty cool looking. Yeah, so go ahead and get the next questions ready. And I will give this one a quick save again. But that's neat looking. I'm a little curious about those hair dynamics. Like, do we just need to subdivide these hairs more? Because you see there's not that many subdivisions in it, so we could give it more. We could also, I don't know about these settings. I mean, we got friction, bounce, forces. Maybe this overall mesh needs to be subdivided more for it to be able to see it. I don't know. But it's cool. Oh, Tobias says, here's a little challenge. What do you got? Instagram. So this is from MT01. MT01. So that's a new person we haven't gotten one from, which I think is cool. Ooh, blobby, blobby, blobbies. That's really cool looking. I like the kind of clay effect on the overall thing. That is neat. Actually, another detail on there. No, actually, that makes sense. I was going to say, look at this really nice material. Actually, there is almost a little bit of stretch to that, so it makes me think there's a volume of texture, which is a really interesting detail. I mean, the fact that there is set textures on these is intriguing. In any case, I think we can do something along-ish these lines. Let's see what we got. Keep it simple. We're going to work from a cube. Why don't we... Yeah, cube's fine. We're going to make a cube, and we're going to put it into a cloner, and we're going to make a series of these cubes. So yes, we want to make clones. Let's go ahead and make, how many? 5? I'll make 5 to keep it clean. We are not traveling up on Y. Let's go and change our display mode to be lines so we can see inside of it. What I want to do is shrink each of these. So let's go 90, 90, 90. Actually, it's not bad. Let's go 85, 85, 85, just a little more. There we go. So they're each scaling inward a little bit from the previous one. Make that editable. Now we've got all of our cubes. All of these cubes then get a thickness applied. So we would go and put this into a volume, R20 volume builder. And if we drop them all inside of the... I guess we need to give them thickness first, now that I think about it. So we can make it editable. If we want to keep it kind of parametric, we could grab each of them, and I guess a quick way is to put them in a cloth surface with 0 factor. Don't subdivide. Yes, give it thickness. So I'm going to give it a thickness of 5, and that's 1. I can yank it out actually and go copy, paste, 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 paste. So we have 4 more of them. And now we'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So each of these has some thickness applied. Actually, taking a look at that, I think we can go further. So what I'm doing is kind of going until the point where they're almost caught up to the other one. There we go. So now each of those is its own little volume. Let's go ahead and give this a save before we drop this into the volume. Volumes are very stable, but I don't see any reason to lose the work we've got already. Layered cubes volume thing. All right, drop of these all into the volume builder. And then the volume builder needs a voxel distance. Let's try 5. Let's try 2. Are we that small? Why are we... What what do we got here? Let's go and pull all these out and just take a look at one of them. The volume builder is not liking this. Do we have to turn on mesh points? Interesting. Let's see why it doesn't like it. Is it that the normals are facing the wrong direction? Like that normal is facing out? Oh. Apologies. I'm going to hit undo. The reason it didn't like it, undo a few more times. The reason it didn't like it is my display mode was such that it was not showing them. My bad. Okay, so we want these to be relatively low detail as long as we can get away with. So all of those are going, they're all unions on top of each other, which is fine. And then we can do something like make a sphere. And we're going to move it out to the corner. I even kind of like the idea that it's inside a little bit more. We'll do something like that, and we drop that into the volume builder, and we say this one should subtract. All right, cool. We're subtracting. Now, it seems like we have not quite enough detail to see our individual layers, which is interesting. Or these are too thick, and we're catching up to the previous ones. Let's go 15. Now we're back to another problem of sorts. I'm going to make the thickness quite thin. Yeah, so these, let's go back to simplifying. I'm going to pull this out. So now you can see that it's actually taking, if we turn everything off, it's, even though this cloth should be a kind of a thickness, it's filling in the volume. I wonder if the normals on these are not proper, so they are... Yeah, the normal direction I don't think we can trust based off the cloth nerve. I'm not entirely sure. That still seems weird to me, though. So I'm going to copy that, paste it into a new file, make it editable, go to polygons. Let's go and click on that. That's fine. Let's go inside of it and click on that. Well, that seems correct. Let's go UR. Yeah. So that seems to be correct. So the volume doesn't like this cube within a cube. Like we're trying to give the cube thickness this way. That's an interesting... that's an interesting limitation. You see, it's just treating it like a full volume, even though it's just a little bit of thickness. You go ahead and put that into a connect. See if that changes anything. Nope. Connect did not fix it that time. Now, the volume builder is currently set to sign distance. We could try setting it to fog. Yeah, actually, fog is doing a good job of showing us that, yeah, this inside is being counted. Optimize and close holes. If I say use mesh points, it's going to just do the points of the mesh. Don't want to do that. Interesting. I just thought this cloth nerve thing would work really easily. It's not. Now, it's not like that's a dead end. This would be really straightforward for us to go and put this back to sign distance and turn off the sphere for a second. So we've got a cube, and we could, right now we've got the cube, and we could say that the sphere should indeed subtract from the cube. So it takes that bite out. But then we can just make a cube. I'm going to make a child of it. I think that should be fine. I'm going to drag it in. Above it, I'm going to say subtract, and I'll grab that small, or the second one, and shrink it. So you can see I can do it that way. I'm just surprised that our volume on the thickness didn't work. It's like, oh, I found a shell. Cool, I'm a volume. We could probably have put like a little hole in the bottom, so that would force it to acknowledge it. But that's weird to me. It's definitely a little weird. Okay, so it should be relatively straightforward for us to like make a copy of that mesh, and we have to do it again and again and again. It's a little clunky, I gotta say. And then even these, like the hierarchy is throwing me off now. We got so many different objects. I feel like we're gonna mess this up if we're not being really meticulous. So in fact, we will be really meticulous. Get rid of that. So we've got, I'm gonna add in a cube, And then we'll say child, or I'll say subtract. Shell, subtract. Okay, so then we add in a cube shell, and we'll add in a cube subtract. And then oh yeah, and we have to hide them because those are no longer being disappeared by it. So okay, so, sorry, yeah, it's gonna be a little meticulous, but now we can go and drag in the next shell, and then grab the next subtract, and subtract it, and grab both of those, hit T for scale, shrink those. So shell, subtract, 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 subtract. Okay, interesting. Apple, I did go and make them very thin. Originally, they were quite thick, and I made them really thin. It still didn't acknowledge it. It doesn't even acknowledge it on a single one. But subtract. Oh yeah. Oh, this one becomes a union. Oh my goodness. Like I said, this hierarchy is going to get weird. That's a concerning part. Okay, if I make a copy here and shrink this, maybe we have to make bigger ones. So I can go and add that on the top, make a union. Oh, we probably need to make folders. So we make a folder of that, put this in, put in the subtract, and now we could shrink those. Or not. What? Wow, this is some behavior. Some behavior I was not expecting. If I take a union of this thing that should just be a byte, yeah, so that's just a byte. So we should have that, subtract this. We got that, the shell, subtract that, which is smaller. It doesn't like it. Huh. Oh, this threw me off. I thought this was... Yeah, some of the details here are throwing me off, everybody. Though it's not behaving in a way I would think it would. Now, what we could do, this is getting a little hacky, but if we give it the thickness back again, so I'm going to give it some thickness, and then we punch a hole in it. So if I were to make a cube, T for scale, poke it through the bottom, like that. So essentially, we're making a drain hole, and it's going to force it to not be a full volume. So if we do that, we make a bool, we fit this in there, and we fit that in there, and then I say A subtract B. So now you can see that we are indeed seeing inside of this box, and we have that volume. So the drain hole should force, I say, the volume builder to acknowledge it the way we want it to. So now we put that on the bottom, that subtracts, and now the sphere can go in the corner, T for scale. So now you can see the drain hole is making all the difference because now it's kind of like forcing it to acknowledge that this is a empty shell. But if all I do is take this drain hole and like scoot it away a little bit, pop, the whole thing turns into a single volume. That's the problem there. So it's got nothing to do with them intersecting, and the wall thickness is fine. So that's, I mean, it's a pain, and we could hide this easily. You know, if we go and make that 10, 10, like we still, it's a tiny drain hole, but it's still a drain hole. And then we could scoot this up here. Like so. Then there we go, pretty straightforward. And now it's as straightforward as copying and pasting the whole rig again, dropping it in, and then that can become a union, and then we just shrink it. We shrink the original and the whole. Do this, and then boom, get the next. Oh, we're pivoting from the wrong spot. There's always something. Okay, sorry. The bool is from the center. Oh, I guess that's the center. And I selected that and that, it was going to the halfway point. That's fine. This is actually something cool I want to show you. So I want to scale this down. If I select the bool and the drain hole, probably be even good to name that hole, just to keep it clean. If I want to scale this down, if I click on both of them, you see I get that axis, and it puts us at the midpoint. But you can actually just click on whichever axis you want, and your axis will jump to that one. And now as I scale, it's actually pivoting correctly from that one. So copy and paste again. And the reason, by the way, I'm not just scaling it from the bool is the hole would be getting tinier and tinier, and our shell would be getting tinier and tinier. And I actually don't want that to be shrinking. In fact, I shouldn't have accidentally, I accidentally grabbed the bool. I actually wanted the shell and the hole, but the same problem still happens. Shrink that one in. It looks like the drain hole got messed up or got too small. Okay, what's wrong with this one? Oh, I guess we just weren't taking a bite out of it. Apologies. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. I mean, it's getting clunky here, and I'd like to move on to another question because we took so long fighting our volumes, which is kind of a new problem I had never bumped into. That it was a pain to get to this point. So yeah, having done that, obviously the basic idea would be we could move our sphere around. As the sphere moves around, we're going to be getting different cuts through our object, and we can see the overall shape, which is neat. Change this to an icosahedron, maybe set to 64. Yeah, so we get these nice cuts coming out. We get our nice shape. And the part I kind of want to explore was that really nice, the way the material was surviving based on noise. And I feel like that's probably pretty doable. I guess we can do a quick test, but I'd like to move on to another question. I'll save this and we'll do the quick version of the text. I'll make a volume mesher, and we could drop that into the volume mesher. We get our actual final mesh. You see it's actually a pretty thick, detailed mesh. Don't think we need that much. Let's jump it up to 4. Everything should calculate quicker. Okay, it looks like 4 is our magic number. If we go to 5, it breaks it. So we've got that going on now. My basic thought is if we were to make a material here, let's go and make a. We're not going to make anything fancy. Let's go and make a purple. Why not? We never use purple. And then we'll go to bump, and we'll make a noise. And it's probably going to have too much of a delta, so we're going to crank the delta way down. Let's make a knocky, clip it off a bunch. And then that should pretty much make us a nice bump on our surface. There. And we want some nice lights to be creating the highlights here. Let's see. I want, heck, I'm going to use, just for the speed, I'm going to use Light Kit. So I can do that because I helped make most of Light Kits. I'm going to go ahead and create one from the browser. I'm going to make Dark and Stormy with Pedestal, which is my favorite one that I made. And everything's a little small, so I'm going to increase our global scale. And let's go ahead and delete everything. But then what I'm going to do is grab all 3 lights. I'm going to say expose light, and now we've got these lights. I'm going to copy, paste, and now there you go. No more Light Kit, but we got the lights. So I should be able to, and in fact, I'm going to grab these lights in their area lights, but I'm going to say that they're soft shadow so we can render quick. And I'm going to say x times 1.5, make it brighter. There we go. Got a little something there. So I just want to check out this bump. It's really tiny. So let's go ahead and make it 5 times the scale. And let's make it deeper. All right, got a little something going there. And now I'm going to copy this noise into the diffuse channel. Okay, that's acting a little weird. Bump to diffuse. Okay. Ooh, let me make sure I'm on the right window. drag the bump into the diffuse channel. This should affect the specular. So hopefully that's making everything, yeah, all the bump becomes a little bit darker, although I don't like the way that looks too much. I can crank this up quite a bit so that those become darker in the cracks. And then the main thing is we need to go to our specular and or reflection. In fact, I think light kit lights don't have specular. I'm going to go ahead and just turn those back on again. Oh, they do see the specular here. That's fine. Am I just not catching a good angle here? Like, these bumps are so incredibly subtle. Maybe instead of bump, we should use diffuse. That'll force it to, or displacement. What am I talking about? Displacement. And we'll do a couple subdivisions, not many, because it's already heavily subdivided. Interesting. Yeah, I like that. That's more along the lines of what I was going for. Although I am surprised that the specular is being so dang non-existent. Subtle. Where is our specular? Is it just the angle we're at? Maybe. Anyway, I just wanted to do a quick test. So we're just going to grab the sphere. I'm going to record it. And let's jump to the end. And then we're just going to have this move over to there. That should be a pretty straightforward test. Should run pretty smooth. We don't have the layers textured up differently, but honestly it's the same concept either way. Now we're using procedural noises, which is the part that makes this interesting to me. Because the procedural noises make it so that as this dissolves away, we see additional interior detail. I'm just going to go ahead and say all frames, and let's go ahead and render this out. And let's see, it shouldn't take too long to crank through these frames. Yeah, you can see as it, like the fun part there is as this eats away at like this damage, the damage actually is going to curve down inside of the shape. Level bevel, you might have said that a while ago. I didn't check the chat there, but I did try making a cube and subtracting a smaller cube. It did not like it. It did not like it. We needed a drain hole, and otherwise it did not work. So there are some mysteries to the volumes that I wasn't aware were a thing. But in any case, this should be, yeah, it should eat through. I mean, we didn't add any smoothing to this, which would have been good. But yeah, it eats away from the material. The I guess the slightly interesting thing is how the other one seemed to stretch a little bit, and we're not getting that effect too much here. But that might be a result of not having any smoothing going. So if we were to add some smoothing, the smoothing is obliterating the thicknesses. We could potentially fix the thickness here. And then we have to decrease the detail. Man, everything's just a cascade of complications, isn't it? Well, there we go. We got more thicknesses. All right, that's weird. The smoothing, smooth layer after the sphere. And I mean, we can, like, that's going to smooth out the corner, but it's not going to smooth out the rest of it. So there almost seemed to be, the part that is intriguing me on the other one, we're just not seeing any representation of it whatsoever. Yeah, even the smoothing, like the whole point of those is that they do a good job on the edge. Completely not seeing the smoothing. There it is. No stiffness. Yeah, even here you see how the smoothing is doing almost nothing. We could add more iterations, but I still don't think it's going to do that much. And now there's going to be a lot more calculation time as this moves through. But I'm just curious if there's more of a curvature on the edge. It almost looked like there was. The calculation time is going to be longer, although maybe they don't have to be because we're so much more subdivided by default that we probably only need to subdivide once, or even not at all, because there's so many subdivisions already. Yeah, that's not terribly different. So that might not. Well, I guess the volume is going to take longer to calculate as we go frame to frame. But I really want to see is if this is dissolving the edge a little bit more with all the smoothing that we have, the internal smoothing and then the deformation based smoothing. Apple, that is a good idea. An alternative we could have done is instead of trying to feed these all into one volume, each volume could have been its own single thickness, and then we make a second volume, and they could have all been referencing the same sphere. That would have been a good idea. Although, having said that, I'm not entirely sure that that would work because, just out of curiosity, I'm going to go ahead and give this a save. If we open up a new file, paste it in, we don't need the smoothing. Let's keep only one layer. If right now we're booleaning that, but if we pull this out, okay, well, your thought had been, let's use no drain hole, no thickness. And then the idea would be we put 2 shells in, no sphere yet. So we have 1 shell, and inside the builder, shell 1 should be a subtract, and then we shrink it. So now this should, in theory, be hollow, right? Because we have a small cube inside of it and a thicker cube on the outside. Lots of detail for it to take a bite out of. Now, let's say that the sphere is on top, and that is also subtract. Okay, that did take a bite. So that did indeed make the volume. The problem is that putting, these 2 cubes together or doing, if the mesh really was an empty volume, it doesn't work. You have to build it manually. It's a strange limitation that I wasn't expecting. But to your point, actually, here's an interesting question. Can you put more than one volume builder in the volume mesher? Oh, cool, you can. So we only need one mesher, but we have multiple builders. But yeah, now I could grab these 2 cubes, and we don't, we'd put the sphere, the sphere would live outside of it, and we'd grab both builders. I guess we have to do it one at a time. Put 1 sphere in, and 1 sphere in, hide the original, and then say subtract, and now we could grab these 2 cubes at T for scale and scale them down. So that's an alternative methodology for building our series of volumes. And there's still only 1 sphere, so we'd still get the same pretty straightforward effect. I'm glad that this works. It's still a little unintuitive. That's weird, but it is also at the same time cool that we put multiple volume builders into a single volume mesher. Let's see how our render turned out. Okay, that's a little better. With all the smoothing, you see how on the edge, you see we almost get like this little bit of erosion happening. There's like this extra motion happening before we get there. And that is cool. I like that. Trying to think if there's anything else you could do there where like the inner part of that could be corroded. But I don't think that actually makes sense. But in any case, let's go ahead and grab another question. And I'll save this as B. 5B. All right, to the questions. Thank you, B. Havana, saying, watching me troubleshoot when I don't know what I'm doing, and I still try and do it, and narrating the entire process. So yeah, thank you very much. That's a very nice compliment. The problem is when we dead end there, or it's a gray area, and I'm not sure exactly where we're going. So it feels like that's when we get into a cul-de-sac, and we can't do a lot of questions. Let's see. So, do we have any other questions popping up? We got some conversation going back and forth. We already did that little challenge. If somebody had a question earlier, post it, and I didn't do it, go ahead and post it in here again. Where we currently are in the chat, so I can see the new link instead of going all the way back through all of the previous chat. Mr. Matt Dog, can you make Sketch and Toon, a Sketch and Toon line multiply onto the background? But the background doesn't show through. Marco, what's going on? Good to see you again. Happy Wednesday. Sketch and Toon line over the background. Multiply. The most basic version of this that I can think of is, why don't we go ahead and make a... I'm going to make a sphere. I'm going to keep it geometry. I'm going to make a sphere. I'm going to make it so big that we're inside of it. Now let's go ahead and make a material. And this material, let's go ahead and make it a color. Actually, let's make it a luminant gradient. We'll apply that to the sphere. We'll set this to frontal so we get the perfect gradient traveling from one side to the other. Now that that's happening, let's go ahead and create a helix spline. Let's go ahead and give it a lot of spirals just for fun. Give it some more points just to sharpen it up. Let's make it twisty. Let's make it a little bit longer. Okay, so now we got this big line. Let's go ahead and make a sketch and Toon material. Shader sketch material. Let's apply it to the helix, which should automatically render. If we go to render settings, we have to go to our settings. If I render right now, we're going to see the line. Actually, the background's doing surprisingly well. Under shading, I would think that we'd have to set background to off and then set the model to not quantize, turn shading off. But for some reason that was looking okay right away. I'm not entirely sure why. But in any case, your question is, can we make it multiply in the background? The main idea being is, let's say we take this line and let's make it thicker. And let's go to the color, and I'm going to make the color a little bit of a gray. So now you can see, let's see, make it lighter. Okay, so now this line is light over here, but over here it's lighter in the background. But let's say we just wanted to darken by this amount in the entire background. I don't actually know if this is possible, but if it is possible, we're going to find the setting under render. And under render, we have blending and clip render, show visible, blend. So there's self blend and blend. So if we set blend to multiply and it doesn't do it, I don't think we can. And it didn't look like it did. Self-blend is just on top of itself, like if it crosses over itself. So if I say multiply here, you can see where one line passes over another line, they will multiply, but it's not looking at the background for that at all. Render opacity, clip render, that's not a thing. Mode, visible. None of these other settings would have any bearing on that. If we go here, we can say combine, nope. Hidden call, nope. I've clicked through a lot of these settings before, and I just don't think that's a thing. Render, multipass. Yeah, I do not think that we could make that color multiply into the background. You'd have to render it out as a separate pass and then multiply it on the layer underneath in After Effects or in Post somehow. There's no way to multiply it on the background directly, depending on what your background is. Now, having said that, potentially there's ways you could, inside of the color, we've got this, you could potentially apply the same material here. Like we could say, which one is it? Texture, screen texture maybe? And then, yeah, if we said screen texture and then we feed in that same gradient, then maybe. I'm not sure that's entirely working. But what I did is I fed in a gradient, and by doing it based on screen texture, it's mapping it in the same way that the sphere is getting it applied. And then it's multiplying here. And now you can actually see, indeed, it does get darker as it goes over. So if we made this line lighter, you see it's very light, but it gets darker as it goes. So it's, yeah, quite light, but we can still see it as darker than the background by applying it in the screen texture part of it and not the front. Having said that, I mean, this is kind of neat by itself, and that the way it's overlaying here is working pretty well. But this is only working based on the screen texture, so potential limitation there. Let's see, did you get more specific with your question? Yeah, so you were able to test out some of those and that. So if your screen texture multiply isn't working, which it is working here, it does successfully get darker as it goes. if that doesn't solve your problem, then I think you would just have to composite it. Okay, well, okay, that might be helping you a little bit. So I'll go ahead and save this one. I don't think there's much to it, but I don't think there's much to it that would be useful to the average Sketch and Toon user. Sketch and Toon multiply lines. We definitely got time for at least one more question, so let's see what we got. Umbrella. What do you got? You got a link to... Zach is saying under Sketch and Toon render settings, there's a background blend option. Background blend? Under Sketch and Toon render settings, that's where we are. Render, background blend. Okay, so I found your background blend, but what does that mean? In order to see if that was a thing, let's go ahead and turn off the screen texture. I mean, well, it's hard to tell there. I mean, it's getting lighter there. It's not darkening it. So background blend mode include. Yeah, that doesn't seem to do anything. So, yeah, maybe you're talking about something else. I'm not sure. In any case, I'm going to jump to Umbrella's link. We got Pinterest link. Let's see what we got. Ooh. So, well, interesting. Remember, I need to see the artist who made it. So this is just someone who saved it. So who made the original? And if I click on it, it's not going. I'm not sure what this means. Look at it go. Tell you the truth, though, I feel like if anybody can track down the artist who made that, that would be wonderful. If you will go check out that link. Oh, wait. Well, I don't want to jump around too much, but Zach is saying that if the options enable, Sketch and Toon lines will blend with anything behind them, not just other Sketch and Toon lines. And I found it there, but... multiply. I went to render. I say background blend. This is already turn off screen texture, and this is still set to render multiply, which means it should be constantly darkening things. But you'll see that that is lighter than the background. So I'm not following what you're saying, Zach, because Sketch and Toon lines are not blending with anything behind them. Like they're still brighter than it, and it should be by definition darker if these are set to blending is set to multiply. So that's what I'm not following there. But in any case, I'm going to see if we can do something along the lines of what we just saw on the other one. Because I think some of it is a little bit straightforward. Oh, let's see. Oh, nice. Paul to the rescue. All right, so we can start this one again. He found this posted by Nekilon. So I just wanted to be able to give credit. Thank you so much for tracking that down. So having seen that, let's see if we can get something akin to it, something a little bit like it. I'm going to create a... I think we can even make a weirder shape than usual. What I might do is make something like a... I kind of want to make a cube, honestly. Let's make a cube and subdivide it 10 by 10 by 10. And then I'm going to put this into a spherify. We've probably done this with a default type of cube or a default type of sphere. But by putting this in, you see the subdivisions I'm getting on my cube. So that's kind of what I wanted. So having gotten that, I'm going to put this into a connect object, make it editable. And now I'm going to select all of my, actually I'm going to make it parametrically. Let's make a bevel deformer, which is hiding from me. This menu, I am absolutely blind in it for some reason. Holy cow. There it is. It's the last one. Jeez Louise. Okay, I'm going to put the bevel deformer in there. I'm going to change the bevel deformer to point mode. And I'm going to say limit it. And now I'm going to start increasing our offset. And what's really cool here is if I go farther and farther and farther and farther, you're going to see we get these really interesting inverted shapes. So now we get this really weird, interesting new shape of a cube. And now if we want to go super nuts, we could put that into a connect object and it's re-welding it. And then we could put another bevel inside of that connect. And now you see those are going to re-bevel again. But just because it's kind of a cool looking shape, what if we only do a little bit of a bevel like that? Yeah, there we go. Look at this shape. That's cool looking. All right, so that will be our final object. Let's go ahead and put that into a connect, make that editable, and that's our final geometry. So now we got that. Let's go ahead and I guess it's kind of a job for Sketch and Toon. What if we make a sketch material? So we're a shader, sketch material, apply. We're going to be tracing every single polygon. So we're just going to say edges. And let's go and make a nice looking material here. So that's what it's currently doing, which is strange. Didn't I say edges? Why is it going so nuts with those edges? What? I'm a little baffled with what that's doing. I don't want to like, yeah, we just applied this default. If I turn that off, then it's going to not do anything. If I turn it on, why are those the lines it's returning? Isn't that weird? Weird. Creases, none. Folds, none. Map material, intersection lines. Contour. So you know what? Just not something I want to deal with right now because we're trying to do this quick. Select all. I'm going to hit Shift-C. Type in the word edge. We're going to find edge to spline. Convert that to a spline. Neat. And now we apply that to the spline. And we hide our original geometry. And now this can just be tracing the spline. And now it's successfully working. Cool. So now let's go and make this an interesting looking line. Let's see, what's a good color? I don't know, I'm feeling kind of partial to teal today. Nice bright teal. Let's go and give it a decent amount of thickness. And then we can add on some opacity along the stroke. Yeah, I like that little variation. Why not? And now, this doesn't look much like what we're seeing, but I think that if we make a camera and we go to object mode, we hit Shift-C, PSR, we reset our PSR on the camera and we go inside of the object, and now we start really zooming out. There we go. Look at that. And now, if we start looking around, whoop. Yeah, I'm changing position. I don't want to change position. If I keep my camera zeroed out and I start spinning it around, look how we're going to get this like really cool distortion effect. Oh man, oh my God, even just doing this is making my brain hurt. But yeah, you see how you get those infinite stretches on the edge? Oh my God, is this making anybody else dizzy? I can't believe how quickly that's making me dizzy. So if we zoom up a little bit, that might chill out the effect a little bit. Okay, yeah, that's a little better. But yeah, it is giving me a little bit of vertigo. So let's go ahead and keyframe this. We'll make a perfect loop. Let's see, which one do we like the look of? I mean, honestly, it might be kind of fun. If we do that, that's fine. But why don't we go ahead and increase this to 180 frames. And we'll keyframe it exactly where it is right now. And we're going to, I guess we need full increments unless it's the same top and bottom. If we fast forward to the end, if we rotate 90 degrees, does it look identical? Oh, it does. Cool. That looks identical. And now this one, if we rotate 180 degrees, it looks identical. So if we keyframe those and we're rotating on 2 axes, and we should get all the distortion and a slightly more interesting spin, but we're still going to get a looping animation. So if I grab my first keyframe, holding on shift, my second keyframe, change interpolation to linear. And now we rewind this one frame. I guess it changes orientation there. It's a little bit of a shame. Yeah, it suddenly changes direction, but we do get a perfect loop. I mean, we could loop it more by spinning in multiple directions, or going a full 360 and 180. I'm not sure, but we get that little bump. But you see, it's not a pop; it's just a harsh change of direction. So I'm fine with that for now. And yeah, now, whoa. So yeah, we just get the different distortions. So let's see. The more we zoom out, the more we get this stretch. Let's go ahead and do a render. That's already super crazy kooky looking. I guess because of the way I put the thickness of the lines, it's going to do a pop. It will do a pop on the end, unless we do a full 360. So should we do a full 360? I'm not sure. I also kind of go to thickness and say a long stroke. So now it's going to get thinner as it goes. And then, heck, if we were inclined, we could even add on a noise. I wish the noise was a shader-based one. Anytime cinema has a noise and it's not... I can't feed in a custom shader, I'm always like, oh. I want to keep it a little bit of thickness. In fact, what if we do that? We make a second line. So I'm going to make another sketch material. Let's apply this one as well. And it will also be based on spline. So now this one should be a nice black line. I'm going to put it second. And we're not seeing it, but that's fine. Thickness, it's fine if we go to adjustment. How do we make this one go? Distort? No, I don't think it's distort. I'm trying to remember. It is under adjustment. We can do 3D transform, screen offset, resize strokes. I guess we could do, well, yeah, here if we say 0.99, 0.99, 0.99, then we've shrunk all the lines up, and then we should be pulling them in. Whee! Did I apply the same material twice? I think I applied the same material twice, so that's my bad. I'm going to delete one. And let's actually apply the proper second one so we can actually see if it was working right away or not. It is working right away, so all those things I was just doing, we didn't need to worry about. So now we have this nice thin black line on top of it. I do like the way that's popping out. We'll make it even thinner. Just gives us that detail over on top of it. We could go to our opacity and say a long stroke, and I was going to get faint along those lines, but if I de-invert it, then it's the opposite of the other one, so it's kind of like where any one gap stops, the other begins. I don't know, just looks kind of neat. Yeah, I'm just playing around, so we can add extra thickness there. Also kind of neat, but I kind of like that thin line. Let's also keep in mind that we could add in some really intense distance parameter on here, so we could add on, I guess where would we want to do it? Thickness, opacity, probably thickness. Let's go and make it really thick so it's like way overdoing it. And then we could say the thickness should be based on the distance. And the distance is based on the object, but we could just say custom. So the minimum, I know it's really hard to guess these numbers. So you can see they're really thick all the time, but if we start pulling this back, then we're probably going to start introducing a little bit of a range. Yeah, there we go. So now you can see that they get thick when they're near the camera, and they get thinner as they get further away. Yeah, so you get really thick when they get close here. Now we could, of course, invert that. Now they'll be really thick where they're far away. But yeah, distance can be really cool in this type of situation. So yeah, that's all kind of neat. There's probably, I mean, there's a million things we could layer up, but the point being is we've already got this looping, really cool pattern going. And there's so many more things we can do to introduce variation or randomness on top of it. I just had a random thought pop in my head. Let's go ahead and save this. And let's say spinning inside. I'll say spinning inside. That's fine. Weird thought I had is what would happen if we added a tracer object to that. Now it's not moving, but if we put this as a child of the camera, does that move? Ooh, it does. Wasn't sure that would work. So by putting the tracer, tracing that object every point of it, putting the camera, it's having to move with the camera. So if we were to tell that to go from start, I got it backwards again. Always get it backwards. Now we get this little trailing line behind. And if we were to apply our sketch and tune line to that, then we can get like this little streak that's constantly following behind it. It might ruin our loop, but there's always ways of fixing a loop. Make a duplicate of that material. Color. Let's go back to a nice teal color, but it's more based off of the black one. Render. Whoa, that's intense. Opacity, sorry. Opacity, we'll pull that way back. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Color, let's go a little bit more into the blue range. Ooh, that's getting funky. Yeah, let's just give this a little render, see what we get. I don't know if it'll be any good. Output, half res, make it square. All frames. And you see that I cut out that last frame, so that's where it should create the perfect loop, even though it's going to be a little jerky on the animation where it changes orientation. And then when it comes to a tracer, make sure you rewind all the way, otherwise it can have a frame of lag where it freaks out. And let's send to the picture viewer. We also didn't do the scaling thing. The scales are dramatically different in our render, but I kind of like the new scale as well. Like there's just more going on. But yeah, we should kind of have this infinite world that we're traveling around in. It's always going to loop back because we're inside of a sphere. It's amazing how far a sphere, being inside of a sphere, can work. It's rendering really quick, so we'll just, it's already about halfway. Let's see what it's doing so far. Whoa. Yeah, I like that kind of like highlight over there on the end because the black is always fading out as it gets near the edge. So we always get the teal in the middle. Yeah, it's pretty trippy. I wonder if this, like, you look at this kind of thing where you're just rotating around inside of a sphere, it makes you wonder if this is the way they did some of the special effects in 2001, because that was all practical camera effects. There's nothing digital. So you're inside here, but you're stretching, infinitely stretching stuff on the edge. Pretty cool. I'm glad that worked because I was like pretty confident in the way that was made, but I wasn't super certain when I wasn't sure it would work. So once we started spinning, I was like, I hope this works once we go inside the sphere. Whee. Yeah, so we right now we have these little trails trailing behind, which is a really cool effect on it overall. But we'd have to loop around a second time to ensure that they already existed the first loop. So not terribly difficult. And then the colors are shifting around as well. So it'd probably be a good idea to loop all the way back to the original point. But if we didn't add so much variation, then you wouldn't need to do that. And then, yeah, we're spinning around there, but there are additional options that could be potentially cool, which is if we were to take our camera and move it forward, so now it's going to be stretched there. So you see in this part, it's going to feel really stretched on the edge, but when it spins around to the opposite side, it's going to be, whoa, that's way cooler. Wow, okay. Yeah, by being really near an edge, we feel close to one side of the wall. So that is neat. So we're always kind of near one side. Now it's making me want to push that even further. So if we go pretty near one edge, then that should be fine. You start out with that really nice clean pattern in the beginning. Like, look how long it takes to get away from some of those original patterns. Now, because we did move away, we're not going to be looping. But man, I like this one so much better. I'm fine with that. Let's go ahead and make it a loop by making sure when we get to our final frame, this will be traveling faster, so it's making me want to go to 360, which is fine. It's not that long. We'll grab this. We'll move that all the way to 360. And when we go to the very end frame, we want to have made sure that we have gone all the way around. So one of these could be 720, and the other one can be 360 if we want to get the same effect. But we just had to complete a full rotation. So now, yeah, we get the stretching, whoa, really extreme. And yeah, that is super trippy. How's that looking sketch in Toon? Oh, that's cool. Man, we pushed that further and man, it looked cool. Uh, I like it. So, having done that, one last thing that would be neat potentially is adding some random rotation to our spline as well. So we'll just keep it going with keyframes. I will keyframe it at 0, and we'll keyframe it at 360, and I'm going to have it spin 360 right there. And now we chop off our final frame, which should turn into a loop, and now we should get this stretch. And now the ground is also sliding around beneath us. Whoa, we got super trippy and crazy. Oh my goodness. I like it though. And then we get the trace, and that should be fine there. We did add a lot more, or we doubled our number of frames, but that should be looking good. Look how simple it's going to start out. And then it's going to get crazy as it goes. But it's cool. Oh, man. I think we got time for one last one. Let's see. Crossfader's asking how to make a jumping jelly bean. It depends on stylistically the way you want the jelly bean to jump. If it's just supposed to be like what is it, the Mexican jumping bean, where it's actually like a little egg, or like it's like a bean where a bug lays an egg inside and the bug can like snap and then jump the bean. I think that's a thing. Then Paul found what might be the actual artist. So that link to Reddit might not have been. It was Clayton Shonkwiller. Ooh, look at all these nice little, like, really graphic studies. Like, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. Oh, man. Oh, look at that one. That's clean. I like it. Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm feeling pretty confident in it. Yeah, look at all these offsets. And a lot of them just have to do with being inside of the object. Pretty neat. All right, well, thanks for finding, once again, tracking down the super specific source of that, because it's really neat. Yeah, this is just cranking through the keyframes like nobody's business. Good old sketch and Toon. Okay, back to the idea of a jelly bean. If we had a... I mean, it goes to like, is it the jelly bean doing squash and stretch to jump, or is it just suddenly leaping up into the air? Is it supposed to be dynamic, or is it supposed to be based on, like, with my gnome animation, I had the gnomes randomly moving around, so you could probably keyframe in, make it a very art directable thing using effectors. I think would be another doable option. Could, and even that, even if they're dynamic. Yeah, you're saying dynamic like popping popcorn, but even that popcorn jumps because it suddenly scales up, it gets bigger. So it goes to stylistically completely different approaches if it is supposed to be like just magically shooting up in the air randomly, or if it's supposed to be doing a little hop, because effectively popcorn's doing a hop by scaling upward. But in my head, I think it'd be kind of cool to make them magically shoot up, because that would be specific. Yeah, okay, so hey, Crossfader's saying a magic jumping bean. I agree, but let's see how this looks. I want to fix this radius because I don't like the way that's appearing and disappearing. But besides that, that's cool. I like it. I like it. I'm going to just fix that material right away, because why not? Thickness, distance. We moved over to one side, so I'm going to set that up to 300. Jump to about the midpoint when we're at the furthest. Doesn't feel like it got away. This here's not 400, is it? I don't think it is. Alright, I'm not liking the distance being so random. But I do like the distance. Tough one. 500. That's my final offer. Not working at all. 100. Cuts off way too early. How big is the sphere? How big is the sphere? It's 400. We're near the wall, so 400 should be the magic number. But then it gets real thick. Is this one? Oh, it's also distance. Okay, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Better or worse? Thickness 3. A long stroke. Works for me. Save, render, magic jumping jelly bean. Back. Okay, new file. New file. Magic jumping bean. We'll make an infinite floor. We'll make it white. We will make a little bean. Actually, I think the easiest way to make a little bean is going to make a sphere. Change it to a icosahedron. We're going to shrink it. I guess we should still leave it at 0 because it'll make it easier for the deformers. We'll just move our floor down. And let's make a bend. We'll put the bend in the bean. Fit the parent. Stretch. There we go. We got a little bean. Okay, and then I'm going to make that. Put in the connect. Hide the bend. I think that actually might be it. Yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with that. Okay, so. Why do I? Oh, I remember. I have world grid turned on. I almost never have world grid turned on. It's visually annoying to me. Okay, so we've got our bean. Let's go ahead and turn on SSAO so we can see the point of contact. Let's go ahead and make it, and the floor, dynamic, simulation, rigid body, and of course, a cloner. Boop. And the cloner is going to be a honeycomb because everybody loves honeycombs. Okay, so we've got some random beans. Now we're going to go ahead and make a random, and we're going to give it, I don't know, 5, 5, 100 on Y, random rotation, 720. Boom, boom, boom. Looks good to me. All right, and now, and why don't we add on another random. Let's make the first one pause / rut, and the second one is going to be color, and the color is going to control the color, affect color, and let's have it not go negative so we get all of our nice colors. There we go. Every color bean. All right, we'll drop our floor down a little bit, and now we hit play, and these should be pretty dang low poly. Yeah, we're also rendering. We're getting about 30 frames a second, so it works. And let's say jumping beans. Number 8. 8 different questions today. It's pretty good. Okay, so we've got our little beans. So they're just going to be hanging out on the ground. I think they feel a little more bent than they should. Let's do 111. Bink. There we go. Bing. So my thought is let's increase our dynamic calculation speed, timescale 200. So everything's calculated a little quicker. Everything just feels a little crisper. And now this is not going to be that crazy, but I'm going to go and add in. Yeah, let's just add in a particle wind. Yeah, a particle wind. Particle wind, you say? Let's go ahead and hit R for rotate. We're going to push it, aim it up, and we're going to give it a speed of, I don't know, 555. Let's see what we get. Whee! They all fly up. Cool. nowhere near fast enough. Faster. Whee! They're gone. Okay, now that we've done that, let's go into our fall off. And here's where not sure about how well this will work. Well, actually, I'm not sure it'll work at all. So we're going to start out with the complicated way, which is going to be the shader field, which is the way I want it to work, but I have a feeling it might not. But let's go ahead and put a noise on there. And on the noise, I'm going to make this really mostly dark. So my thought here is if it's working properly, 1 or 2 of these might fly away, and the rest will stay. Oh, interesting. That's not... What? Look at that weirdness. What? Okay, that's interesting and weird. Wow, I can't believe some of them are finding equilibrium in some way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is make these infinitely tall, or I'm going to make it infinitely tall on Y. So you're either in the range or you're not. And so they're going to... Why is it already animating? Like, I don't have any animation speed. Like, they're passing through a noise, but the noise should be infinitely tall. I'm going to set the texture to world space. Okay, world space seems to have made a difference. So now, as I hit the ground, that's definitely making a difference. But, there we go. So, now, I think really all we have to do is put some animation speed in. And then kind of find the proper level here where they're going to get caught by little individual bits of color. So like these little flecks of white should occasionally catch it and fling it up into the air. Wee, wee. Okay, so now it's all about finding that nice happy midpoint. Maybe 555 was a good number. Hup. Hup. Our frames have dropped significantly. I want this to run quicker, so I'm going to decrease our poly count. Actually, here's a question. If I turn off the shader field, yeah, this is what I thought. It's something I've bumped into before. It is working, but the shader field, if you use a shader field as something in certain objects like the wind, I thought it was going to work, but what I was misremembering was that it works. It just starts running really slow. Like the shader field is taking forever to do checks. Now, having said that, instead of using a shader field, I think it'll run pretty quick if instead of using a shader field, we use a noise. I'm sorry, not a noise, a random. Let's make a random, and instead of random, we're going to use a noise inside the random. In theory, you'd think this would be the same, but look, it's running way quicker. So, one of the problems here is that, yeah, we were using a Perlin noise, and we do get all of our different noise types, which is fine. Let's make our relative scale the same idea. So now that we got all this verticality, we might not be able to do world noise. The space is global. Okay, cool. We can do global noise. The problem is that all of them are being caught by a little bit of wind. There's a little bit of variation in the way they're being caught. You can see them separating a little bit, but we don't have any of the controls. We don't have contrast or anything, but we do get them inside of some of our settings like curve and clamp. But I'm going to use curve, and what I'm going to say is, like, essentially this is the same as us using contrast. So if I do something like that, I'm pretty much saying only this last bit has any effect. So let's see what we get. Cool. That is actually kind of exactly what I was hoping for. So in our random field, if we give this some animation speed, that should move around in a very similar way. Ooh, relative scale. This doesn't go down to 0, which means it's not infinite. So in order to fix it, we have to go really tall. So yeah, the bigger this number, the closer it is to like infinitely vertical. So now it's animating around. It should be randomly catching different beans as it travels. Now, one of the potential problems here is that if this bean is flipping through the air, there's a chance that it's going to do like a double jump where it's going to hit and then catch a different bit of verticality somewhere else. So there's a couple of extra things we need to do. Let's go back to our random field, and a couple things I want to do. We've got an animation speed, which is fine. We need to worry about actually our curve here. So I want more of a curve, and we can pull this over, and that means if it gets caught in it, it's pretty much full strength. So if you get caught, you get flung up in the air. So now we need to be remapping this noise as carefully as we can. So it should catch certain spots. Yeah, there we go. That's a little bit better. I like that. Now, we need to make sure that these dynamic objects don't turn off. So let's go ahead and say dynamics, deactivation, never deactivate. So these should all be active. So they should all be hopping. Cool. Now, I think the strength is too high, but it's not necessarily going to be too high after we do this one last setting. And that setting is going to be that I don't want it to be able to jump up into the air unless it's already on the ground. And the way we're going to do that is by adding on our wind, we're going to add another fall off linear field. And we're going to set this to Y+. Let's leave this to normal so I can make sure we're doing this correctly. And I'm saying Y+, but this wind is rotated. So I guess it's not Y+, it's actually Z+. So now, if I move it up here and they all fly away, they don't, they fall to the ground. So we need to invert it. So it's the opposite. So we do this. Now, if they all fly away, whee! Okay, so if I were to move this below, they just fall to the ground. So what this is saying is anything inside of this range, and I'm going to make it really tiny. So essentially, if they're flat on the ground, if they're down below the ground, and this is going to be interesting because they're never going to be able to stop. It hits the ground, it's going to get the wind applied, and it's going to fall back down. So they're just going to do this forever. But now we're just saying like, hey, there's no effect unless you're below this threshold, which is fine because now we're going to take that in our wind and multiply it. So now there's no effect unless they're on the ground, and then they suddenly get applied. And now you see the reason I didn't lower the strength is before they're getting shot up in the air and they're staying in a column of vertical noise, which was flinging them really high. But now, instead, they're just on the ground and they don't get applied constantly, so it's not too much strength. So it was almost exactly what I was kind of thinking it would be. I'm going to visually hide those because it's kind of a pain. In fact, I'm going to visually unhide those. We're just going to hide the entire wind. We already know it's doing. So now we get these hopping up into the air. They're occasionally each doing a little jump, jumping into the air. A couple things we can do. First, well, I mean, options. We have really good controls now. If we grab this curve, the further we move these down, the more likely they are to jump. It's going to be kind of exponential, though. We got to be careful. Like, as we pull this in, they're going to start jumping significantly more often. So, like, this little range right here is actually kind of the relevant range. Now, what's cool is this will go on for infinity. They'll hop as long as they move out, and it's infinite. So that's cool. So now we got these magical little jumping beans. Now, you will see, for the most part, that when they jump up, it's a perfectly vertical type of thing, where it's going to hop straight up. Which is neat. I like that. As a slight variation, it might be cool to change these to soft bodies. So I'm going to change this to a soft body instead. I'm going to say, don't worry about self-collisions, and you are very stiff. So we're adding a lot of stiffness. So essentially, they're going to behave like rigid bodies, but it just means that the wind is going to calculate way slower, unfortunately. But it does mean that the wind... It does mean that the wind can catch any point on the jelly bean, which means they could probably get twirled up into the air quite a bit. So let's see. We have to see them settle. But they also might just keep them up in the air a lot more often, where they can never quite settle, and it might not be quite enough strength. So this rig might fundamentally need to be sharper. So like really pinching those settings in and only letting it happen on the occasion. Because right now it seems to catch in the corner. You see this one's going to do like a little flip in the air, which is cool. But yeah. I mean, it's a neat idea, but it's just not. It's so much slower that for our purposes, I'm just going to be like, okay, it's not worth it here. But conceptually, it is working. But yeah, we'll just go to off. And now we're back to some happy little beans. And then something I'd probably be inclined to do here is like these are all going to hop away. And I'm fine with them hopping away. If that's what the setup's supposed to be, because they'll just keep hopping. But this is a good example of using my wind fall off technique, which is just using another simulate wind. And this full power wind is going to blow this infinitely that direction, which is cool on one level, but let's go ahead and make a linear field and set that to Z plus. And now if we were to scale this up, then this is now a fall off for where the beans are. And now as they get outside of that range, they're not going to be blown any further, unless I'm wrong and that's inverted. Yep, I am Z minus. So they're all going to get blown, but as they get near this, they're going to stop being blown. So if we were to take this wind and make a copy of it and spin this one this way, then now you see they're going to get blown back. But if they get blown too far, they're going to catch this wind and go back. So now they're going to tend to want to stay in the middle. If we make one more copy paste and I spin this 90 degrees, then now all of these beans are inclined to stay near the middle. They don't have to stay near the middle, but the further out they go, the stronger the wind is going to be to push them back in again. Having done that, like you could always take this and I could pull this further back so there's a little bit more freedom for them to move around. Do that. And now move that one this way and this one this way. I think. Why are we doing those two backwards? No, seems fine. So now it's pretty much impossible for them to that's behaving a little weird. That's weird. How did that get offset like that? That is bizarre. Bizarre. But yeah, the reason I like wind, we could have used an attractor, but attractors have like an exponential strength, but wind doesn't. So why does, what is that keyframed? Why does that keep jumping back into the middle? I don't think it actually matters, but why is that happening? But yeah, now you can see that the bean, like as the beans get further away, like that one's over here, but it's going to be inclined now to move back towards the middle, and everything kind of lives in the middle a little bit more. Yeah, see that one's super escape, and now he's like, wait, I'm back. But now it's going to get overshot over there. I don't know, it's fun. It's neat. We get some happy little jelly beans. Honestly, I'm going to move them all back in the middle because I think it looks better. And now, yeah, as soon as I do undo it, you see they're all like, no, gotta come back. Bing, hop, 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 hop. I'd probably be inclined, honestly, to grab the floor and let's get rid of all the bounce. And we can even add a decent amount of friction so that, like, most of the bouncing motion is going to come from it being fed the hop. And then they'll stop really quickly until they get their next hop. So the motion is from the jumps. Hop, 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 hop. That's cool. And even this is like, you know, like we set up that linear field so that anything has to be below this threshold on the floor, but that's not necessarily the way you'd have to do that. If we want to, we could make a block here, and this big block could also be a platform they might land on. So we could, you know, let's put one here. I'm going to make a copy and paste, and we'll move this one over here. Scoot this one down, maybe make it a little bigger. We just have these platforms where they might be able to hop and hang out. So if we make those dynamic, like they can't, if they land up there, they can't hop away because they're outside of that linear fall off. We can keep that linear fall off, but the multiply. Okay, so my thought is let's go into this wind. Actually, why don't we save this one? I'm going to save a B. Actually, let's save this one without those. That's A. And now we'll save again as B. And okay, so now we got that. So now we got to do something a little more complex inside of our wind fall off. So we got our linear field, and I'm going to make a folder, and let's put the linear field inside the folder. Now that's not going to be multiply, but the folder overall will be multiply. So now we could go and make a duplicate of this linear field, or we can just make a new field entirely. I can say field, and let's do a box field. I think is going to be the best. Pretty much we give it no fall off, and now we just match one of our boxes here. If I hit Shift C and then we hit the letter P, we can turn on polygon snap, and I should be able to jump. Hopefully, it's just jumping to or surfing. It's on any polygon. I don't want it to be on the middle. I want it to be in the middle of the polygon. Maybe we say midpoint instead of polygon. I'm not sure if that actually works on it. No, I think it only works on edges. Well, so much for snapping. Okay. Anyway. We'll just make that a child of the cube. It doesn't actually, you know, it could live over here as a child of the cube. 0, 0. And now we just give it the height. Let's go to the top view. We can give it the width and the height, and then make it nice and skinny, and just put that there. Cool. And now I'm going to copy and paste, and then this one can be a child of that cube. Move it up into the air. Shrink it in. Shrink it in. And now, because we are using a folder, we can put the box inside the folder. We can put the other box inside the folder. That is each of them, right? Yep. Oh, nope. I definitely tried the same one twice. Keep in mind you can drag certain ones in more than one time. So now if we say this should add to it, and then this one should add to it, then that's adding them all up. And once they're added up, then they can now multiply. So now I think the jelly beans should be able to land. And let's see if one of them will land on the surface. It might take a second for one to actually get up onto the box. Might take a long time for one to get into the box. Oh, one. Okay, that one got up there. So now let's see if that has the ability to eventually hop off. Come on. You can do it. Oh, yeah, okay. It did a tiny, tiny little hop. It was a tiny one. Oh, now we got more. So we can see. Okay, there, the little hop. And then hop. They're not catching big hops, but he's rolling around, so that makes sense. Big. Yeah, not very big hops down there, but I think it should be completely working. I think they're just not catching big hops. Like even down here, they can get little hops. I think they're randomly getting little hops. But yeah, I think you see the point. It'd probably be good to move these a little bit into the middle, just to get some more fun structure. In fact, they're fighting to get up there, so now they're more likely to get up. And then, well, explosion of beans. Beans! Jelly beans! And then we can make render instances kills color, but we can probably make more. Bean. What's our playback speed? 25, so I guess we're about as far as we can go before we start dramatically suffering. To tell you the truth, I'm kind of curious why we're getting big. I don't feel like we're getting any big hops from the tops of those. I feel like we should be. Let's take a look at them. Remapping, full strength. That's cool. Inside of our wind, they're adding. Now we could also say screen, but I don't think that actually makes a difference. And then they all multiply at the end. Let's try saying screen. I wouldn't think that would make a difference, but it might. And this wind doesn't have a natural fall off. It's just based on this random. So the strength should be just as strong up there. Huh, I'm a little stumped actually. Well, yeah, sorry for getting a little stumped at the very end of this when adding on extra detail. I'm trying to think of what could possibly be causing that. We've got the random, and we got this, but this really tall noise should be working completely fine. Clamping it in should be completely working. And then these are going, this linear field should have no effect on these boxes. It's below it for one. Those screen on top of it, it should be a baseline of white to black, and that gets lighter. I mean, the last thing I could think to make it maybe a little cleaner is it's screening. Maybe it's already white. That doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, if we make a solid, so here's a solid set to normal. It's already up to white. If we make that black, then now they're all at 0. So now there's no strength anywhere. And we put that into the folder, and now we can say this screen. So, nope, that is normal. That is screened. So now that screens, and they're all on top of a black. So it's got 0 power unless they're inside of one of these fields, and then they can do a little hop. I don't know if it's hard to tell. Hard to tell, everybody. All right, well, the last thing I want to do is just try and do a quick render with like a ton of beans. So what's the best way to kind of see a shadow here? I guess it's just going to be, actually, I guess the best way is just, we've already got SSAO turned on. So why don't we just do a hardware render. We'll do a hardware render. We'll say OpenGL. We'll turn on SSAO. Actually, it might be fun to do some depth of field because why not? Why not? Cube. And let's make the focal point the middle, right around there. And it's usually pretty subtle in the viewport, so I'm going to make it really tiny, 0.1. Let's turn it on. Depth of field. Yeah, so let's chill that out a little bit. Okay, I think that's kind of working. Now let's hide the box, and now we can go and make a bazillion of these. And that should just work. I'm going to go ahead and give it another save. Now let's go ahead and say 55 by 55. Whoa, whoa, whoa. All right, cool. Now we got a lot of beans. Deselect everything, SSAO, save it, render settings, depth of field, anti-aliasing, sure, why not? Output, half the size, because otherwise it eats up the viewport really quick. All right, and now let's send it. Oh, also, before that gets, I got to turn on all the frames. All the frames. Let's go ahead and hit go. That's going to get the RAM really quick, but let's try and see if we can play this one really quick. Go. Whee. Whoa. I think we have to make all the lines a little thinner. Like they're so thick they're eating up a little too much of the detail. But that motion is really fun. All right, jumping beans. How are we doing? Look at them go. Whee! We currently have 2 seconds worth of jumping beans. That's a party in there. It's ridiculous. Hip, hop, 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 hop. Yeah, because there's so many more beans, it's just like the odds of them jumping becomes like exponentially more likely. But that's pretty fun. I like our magical jumping jelly beans. It's like a jelly bean party. Alrighty, I'm gonna let that chug for a little bit, but I think it is time to officially do the wrap up here. I want to do a couple quick notes. Anybody who's in the chat, thank you so much for coming and hanging out all the way. It's really cool. If you're not already on there, and I know a bunch of you are, but if you're not already following me, we actually, if you're on Twitch right now, if you scroll down, you should see a button to Patreon. If you click on that, then you can see that I've got a Patreon set up. And on Patreon, you can go ahead and follow all the stuff that I'm doing, and you will get early access to tutorials. You will get early access to the stream getting reposted. You will get, depending on the level, you'll get access to the bonus streams on Thursday. You'll get access to all the scene files I was just saving. Those go out to everybody. If you well, I guess that's most of the main stuff. Now, the point is, of course, everything's going to go out for free for everybody. It's just like a little incentive. And this is just to help me be able to make more live streams and create more tutorials. I really enjoy doing them, but, you know, I still have to make a living, too. So this is a good way of making it so I have to do maybe less freelance or that kind of stuff and more of this. Right now, I'm just focusing on this, but you know what I mean. Along those lines, I do want to do a really quick specific shout out over to our current super donor, our Among the Stars donor. So we've got the Great Wanderer Productions, who is supporting at a very big level, and that's really cool. I super appreciate it. So if you happen to catch this, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. In any case, I think we are wrapped up here. Why don't we just go take a quick look at where the jelly beans ended up, and then I will say goodbye. Jelly beans. Oh, yep. Hop, hop, hop. They're just all coming in from out of frame, so it's just piling up even more. That's pretty fun. I might tinker a little bit more and figure out why these aren't jumping in the middle, because it is bugging me a little bit. But it's fun. I like it. Thanks for the question, Lucas. Okay, everybody. I'm going to officially say goodbye. We went almost an hour over, but it's really fun. Thanks so much, everybody. I will see you tomorrow if you are on Patreon, and I'll see you next Wednesday for the next Rocket Lasso Live. But you'll hopefully see me tomorrow when the tutorial is released, and definitely go check that out. In fact, anybody watching, I would really appreciate any extra shares and likes and thumbs up and subscribing. Like, I'm trying to get the tutorial stuff off the ground. I don't even have 1,000 subscribers yet, which I'd really like, because then I can go and get the proper YouTube name and I can unlock some additional features on YouTube. So that is a big goal, but I'm really excited. It's gonna be a really, really, really good tutorial. So I will see everybody tomorrow. Bye bye, bye bye, bye bye. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. Bye-bye.